Imagine an AI model that's so smart it can spot diseases or recognize faces with just, scary good accuracy. Now, what if a hacker could use that same model, not to get answers from it, but to literally pull the private data it was trained on right out of its digital brain? Well, that's what we're talking about today. This is the ghost in the AI, a hidden vulnerability called a model-inversion attack.
And that's the chilling realization when you see it happen. See, this isn't about smashing through a firewall. It's way sneakier. It's about turning the AI's own intelligence against itself, using perfectly normal-looking questions to coax out secrets the model was never, ever supposed to share. All right, let's break this whole thing down. First, we're going to peek inside the AI's memory. Then, we'll see exactly how an attacker can steal a face. After that, we'll get into the tough choices developers are facing, the race to build defenses, and finally, what all of this really means for our trust in AI going forward.
So, first question, how is this even possible? I mean, it sounds like something out of science fiction, but it turns out the very thing that makes AI so incredibly powerful, its ability to learn from just massive amounts of data, is also its biggest vulnerability.
You see, to get really good at making predictions, a model has to find strong patterns and connections in the data. But when it does that, it can accidentally hang on to, or, memorize, really specific details from its training data. You can think of it like a hidden memory, this faint little echo of the original info that an attacker can listen for and then turn the volume way, way up. So what does it actually look like to pull a secret out of this hidden memory? Let's walk through it. This isn't your typical brute force hack. It's a lot more like detective work, trying to reconstruct a crime scene when you only have a few tiny clues. At its heart, a model inversion attack is really a reverse engineering problem. The attacker can see the model's answers, its predictions, its confidence scores, and their goal is to work backwards to figure out, okay, what original piece of data would have made the model say exactly that? So how do they pull this off? Well, it's kind of like a three-step dance. First, they just poke and prod the model. It's almost like a game of hot or cold, trying to figure out which little details get a strong reaction. Then, they take all those reactions and build a statistical map. And finally, they use that map to reverse engineer the most likely piece of original data that fits all the clues they've found. And the results, well, it is chillingly effective. Take a look at this. On the left, that's an original image from the training data. That's the target. And on the right, that is the face the attacker reconstructed. It's not a perfect photo for sure, but it is absolutely close enough to identify someone. This makes the threat very, very real. And this leads us to the absolute core problem for anyone building these things. This constant, grinding battle between making an AI model powerful and making it private. Because it turns out, those two goals, they often pull in completely opposite directions. This here really lays out that fundamental trade-off, that tug of war. To get a model to be super accurate, you need it to learn really strong connections in the data. But for high privacy, you need to weaken or obscure those exact same connections to stop them from leaking. It's a classic catch-22. And here's what that looks like in the real world. This chart is straight from a research paper on a defense method. Watch what happens as they turn up the privacy protection. The model's accuracy just tanks. It completely craters, dropping from about 85% down to pretty much useless. That right there is the developer's dilemma. So the key takeaway here is that this isn't some simple bug you can just find and patch. No, protecting against this kind of attack requires a deep, fundamental balancing act between how useful the model is and how private it is. There's no easy fix, which is what makes this such a tough nut to crack in AI security. So if the problem is baked this deep into the system, how do we fight back? Are we just stuck? Well, not exactly. Luckily for us, there's a whole army of researchers and engineers in a race to build the digital shields that can actually defend our data. And the defense playbook is pretty wide, and it's getting better all the time. You've got folks trying all sorts of strategies. Some are adding strategic noise into the model's logic to kind of fuzz up the data. Others are using advanced cryptography, or even totally redesigning the AI's core architecture so it's private from the ground up. One of the cleverest new approaches is a technique called BiDO. Now, instead of just trying to weaken the signal between the data and the prediction, BiDO actually trains the model to do two things at once. One, make the link between its logic and the right answer as strong as possible, and 2, make the link between that same logic and the private input as weak as possible. It's like teaching the model to remember the lesson but forget the specific example it learned from. It's brilliant. And the results are just striking. On the left, you've got a reconstruction from an older defense method. I mean, you can still kind of make out the facial features, right? Now look at the reconstruction from a model using BiDO. It's a garbled mess. It's noise. The private information is gone. That is a secret successfully kept. The numbers tell the exact same story, and it's a good one. Check out this table. With no defense, the attack is almost 76% accurate. Yikes. An older method helps, a little, but BiDO, it absolutely crushes the attack, cutting its accuracy almost in half, all while causing just a tiny little dip in the model's performance. Now that is a huge step forward in solving that whole privacy versus performance problem. Okay, we've been deep in the technical weeds, so let's zoom back out. Why does this highly technical cat and mouse game actually matter to you? Well, because it is fundamentally rewriting the rules for what it means to trust technology with our most private information. The real-world impacts are massive. An attack could reconstruct your face from a security model, expose your medical history from a diagnostic AI, or leak a company's secret financial data. It could even be used to prove a model was illegally trained on copyrighted books or articles, which would create an absolute legal firestorm. And let's be clear, this isn't just a technical screw-up. It is a full-blown compliance nightmare. Reconstructing personal data, that could trigger enormous fines under GDPR. A leaked face from a medical AI, that's a huge HIPAA violation. Exposing financial data, you could be breaking Sarbanes-Oxley. These attacks don't just break code, they break laws. Which brings us to the big final question that just kind of hangs over all of this. We are building these incredible AI systems that are designed to learn and remember better than any human ever could. But if we can't teach them how to forget, how can we ever truly trust them with our secrets? The race to answer that question is on.